Child, look at that revelation that came just now. The sand itself was an agitator. The sand was something that was super tiny. It was super minuscule and minor. And when it got into that situation where it found itself inside the mouth of a clam, it now came out even. Welcome to another episode of Beanspiration. Welcome back to this channel. I am Sabine. This is Beanspiration, and I'm just here to shed light on all the things that we go through in life and how these things impact us and how our faith, how our spiritual walk can help us and guide us on this journey. Yes. So thank you guys for joining. Once again, I won't belabor this, but this week I was actually stressing about a circumstance, a thing that I'm kind of going through, and I felt a little bit hopeless, right? So I'm human, although I have my faith and I try to stay as close to God as possible, life's right? Life be lifing, as we say. And so because I was kind of feeling hopeless about the situation, like all kinds of things was going through my mind, and I was just kind of like, God, I don't feel like this is fair. I don't feel like this is the deck I should have been dealt, or the card I should have been dealt, the hand I should have been dealt, because I felt like I tried to do all the things right. I tried to be an honest person. I tried to be a moral person. I tried to really, probably too much, right? I'm too overly cautious about doing the right things in life. And so when things don't go your way, when you're somebody who's doing the right things in life, you're like, then what is the point, right? You're like, what is the point? Why am I even bothering to take the time to be good, or to cross on my T's and dot on my I's, or whatever the case is? Like, why am I doing this? And then I had to be reminded, that God doesn't put us through anything that we can't handle, right? You're only going to get the cross that you can bear, right? And even as a believer, like, we're not exempt from going through things. We're not exempt for experiences, but all the things that we go through is to make us who we want to be, what our desire is in God's will for our life. And so I always say, like, be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you ask of God, because you might just get it. And we usually don't get it in the way that we expect it to come, right? We expect, like, okay, God, I want to have this big, successful life, or whatever the case is, and I'm going to take this step and this step and this step. And it's all going to be roses along the way. But it hardly ever happens that way, right? We come across challenges. We come across setbacks. We come across things that make us feel like it's not even going to happen. And the purpose of that is to create in us the person, to set the scene, to create the atmosphere, to be able to receive what we desire, or what God has decided for our lives, what our destiny is, right? We are supposed to be pushed and pulled and prodded and annoyed and agitated and irritated to become this thing. Like, I don't know if any of you have heard about how pearls are developed, right? How pearls come about. So what happens is, I forget which mollusk it is, but it's either like one of those things in the ocean, right, that has a shell, and it's closed. I feel like it's a clam, or something like a clam. And when it gets sand inside of it, right, it creates this little, whatever pearls are made out of, around that piece of sand, because it's agitating and irritating it. So it's basically its defense mechanism against irritants, and it creates this thing around it and then spits it out, and that is a pearl. Is that not amazing? So think about that, as you go through your life and the things that you're experiencing. Like, God may be using these very things that you're going through to create something beautiful, the beautiful thing that you had envisioned about your life, and having perspective that, okay, this is just something that I need to go through, but I know that God is using it for a good. But what I really wanted to get to is that God always makes a way out of no way. Even though we feel like the circumstance is hopeless, like I was feeling this week, God always makes a way. And even when I think back to other circumstances that I thought was hopeless, that I thought was dreadful, that I'm like, how am I going to make it out of this? I'm still here, right? God always made a way out. And I love to say that we have the victory over every single circumstance that we have encountered to date, right? You have the victory because you're still here and you're still pushing and you're still, striving. And if you're watching this video, you're trying to figure out, how can I overcome this? But do know there is a way. Before God created the circumstance, he created the way out, right? Or simultaneously, he created the circumstance, he created the way out of the circumstance, right? And so, I just thought of something like, we were talking about the clam and how the clam got agitated and spit out the pearl. But what about the piece of sand that found itself inside of the clam? And then after it got all discombobulated, or whatever the case is, it got spit out into something even greater than what it was in the beginning. Child, look at that revelation that came just now. The sand itself was an agitator. The sand was something that was super tiny. It was super minuscule and minor. And when it got into that situation where it found itself inside the mouth of a clam, it now came out even